So before I start, I would just like to say that Undine is a pretty tough poem for me because when I read it, I completely disagreed with what the general consensus said, which was that the girl was being in some way oppressed or subjugated. People were saying, "Oh, I'm reading between the lines," and I'm saying, "Oh, this is being sexist against women," and I'm just reading it. And I was like, "Oh, the woman likes it. The nymph, I mean, she's like, oh, I rippled and I churned. I tried to get his heart or whatever." And then the last line of the poem, even though she lost her cold freedom, she was still warmed to the human. And if you consider the background information behind the myth, considering the fact that the the whole point of the Undine marrying a man is to get a soul and to become human and to live forever, because that's what happens when you have a soul. At least, if you believe in this Christian stuff, I guess you could say. But of course, it's true. Um, what else can I say? I would say I disagree with the fact that some people can disagree about really far-fetched ideas. They could say, "Oh, this stuff has no sexual imagery at all," but it does. Obviously, anyone can read this and understand the implications. But okay, I'm talking too much. Perhaps I'm even helping myself before the IOC even starts, but I don't really think so. Um, 8 minutes. Let's start the timer now. Undine is a poem by Seamus Heaney, which is centered around the idea of the Undine, which is a type of water nymph found in mythology. And the purpose of the Undine is to get married to a man, and to basically, by doing this, the water spirit will now gain a soul by becoming human and thus live forever. And however, knowing Heaney's works, he often uh, changes the ideas of certain myths. And although this is an allusion both to back to Greek mythology as well as to Ovid's Metamorphoses, just like in Personal Helicon, in this specific poem, this is my thesis now, the natural imagery itself is used as the illustration and of Ireland, purposed as Ireland, and how the Undine as Ireland outlines an acceptance of Britain, even though Britain is invading and Ireland herself is losing independence. She still likes it. She still enjoys it. And this is completely outlined in the overarching poem because the theme of the sexual act is really prevalent, even though it may be underlying as an implication. So for my first argument, I will be focusing on this act of preparation, how the Undine herself is chasing after the man and has this active willingness to be taken. And I think this contributes to my thesis because it really shows that how oblivious the Undine is to what's actually going on, to the real situation. And this is not merely an allusion to the modern troubles that Ireland was experiencing. It's actually talking about even back then, originally, when the British first settled in Ireland, back in the 16th century during the Elizabethan era. And let's analyze the poem further now. So, in the first line, automatically we notice that the structure and the way that the syllables are pronounced in the poem is quite unique, because the first line, he slashed the briars, shoveled up grey silt, makes use of the meter so that it's almost iambic, but however, every few syllables there is a little mix up to make it a bit more confusing. And the next line is trochaic in the same manner, in the same type of manner. And I feel like this type of confusion that he's trying to add into the rhythm is the striated pattern is all about losing the Undine, be stepping out into unknown waters. Pun intended. Pun intended. Then okay, but polluting the environment, shoveling up gray silt. There is an alliteration here. Shoveling up the silt. which is actually a good thing for the Undine, and that's why she appreciates it, and that's why she sees her chance to approach the male. And in a way, she's kind of giving herself these illusions, this cognitive dissonance, by saying that that the man gave her right away, even though later on we say that the man did not notice her. So the man is not consciously doing this. And I feel like this water imagery with the drains and the rust, especially in the first stanza, it's almost as if she is preparing herself to attract him. This is like consider the idea of mating. And the fact that in the next stanza, there's a real ambiguity of sentence structure, because when you read the second line saying running clear with apparent unconcern, who is this unconcern attributed to, the man or the woman? And this considers the idea of this, how the duality of the two ideas between the man and the woman are really not that different. However, the man still ignores her, even though she's running around, this repetition of ideas, because the running happens both in the first and the second stanza. It really is a symbolic idea. This type of tone, this type of flirtatious tone, the rippling and the churning act, the use of water imagery once again is as an extended metaphor and analogy for how positive the outlook of Ireland is to Britain, even though all of this is happening. And we need to prove that Britain is subjugating the woman, and this happens later on in this poem. The fact that there's a tone shift in the middle of the third stanza. This is the portion when the ditches intersected. This specific use of diction is purposed to question how long did she spend rippling and churning? How long did she spend before she finally won him over? And what did she actually gain from winning him over? He dug the spade deep into her flank. This is obviously alluding to the sexual act, and of course, the fact that there's a caesura in the third, the caesura of the period in the third stanza, taking her to him, swallowing the trench, implies this entrapment. Also, while also being engulfed, the water imagery continues, dispersing herself for love like water. So she is still water. The whole point of the act of marrying the man is to become a human. However, this is not marriage. This is just the initial thrill. This is the act of losing the virginity, which high school students should not do. Make sure, wait until marriage, guys. Also, what? Oh, I lost my train of thought now. Okay, so the act of the Undine marrying the man has been corrupted, and ultimately, in the end of the fourth stanza, it says, "I alone." There is no connection between the two of them. It's a lose-lose situation, because if the man cheats on the woman, then he will die. And the fact is that the woman has to marry the man, and this type of this intimate act between the two of them is not representative of what truly is marriage. And this, of course, alludes to Ireland itself. So this is my conclusion, that the fact that the reason why Ireland and Britain accept each other is because of this. They have a naive attitude of each other. They are not aware of what commitment they actually must have to put towards each other to gain from each other. And this is why the Undine has such a positive attitude. She thinks she has succeeded, but in fact, she has failed. And so, we will now have our discussion question. If you look at number, one of the discussion questions for the 2 minutes is the asking, basically, explain how the last stanza, basically analyze the last stanza. What is the importance of the last stanza of the poem? Miss Parla Greco was going to ask me that for my mock IOC, but then I ended up talking about the last stanza at near the end of my IOC, so she didn't ask the question. But this time I chose specifically. I saw that my time was running out, and I said, okay, I won't talk about it so that she'll ask me this question. So if you memorize your questions beforehand, and then you will know what she's asking you beforehand. She might ask me about sound devices too, but I wrote about how the meter and the foot, the trochaic, the iambic. So, okay, let's start the 2 minutes discussion. So, the significance of the last stanza is mainly about the progression of ideas. The fact that in the first line of the last stanza saying could give him subtle increase in reflection. It really it genuflects on how little of a change there is over time. That although such a big step is being taken, it will not mean anything in the long run. And perhaps this is a comment on the state of sexual ethics in the world, because my analysis is so good, man. But if we want to discuss there is a huge juxtaposition of ideas which is split by the caesura on the last line, because the Undine loses all of its cold freedom. However, in the end, she's still warm to him. Perhaps the last line transforms the entire idea of the poem and really opens you up to understand that it is a good thing. It's a positive. Oh, this is some bad vocabulary here. Sorry. Good thing. What can I say? That although that the idea of the cold and the warm are contrasting, it is ultimately because of this is all from the mindset of the Undine herself. We don't understand the perspective of the man, and we only have this, and we've already proven that the Undine has this aspect of naivety, and this is why when we analyze her use of words, we must use a degree of scrutiny to be more shrewd. There, my time is up. And well, okay. You're still here? Yeah, so what do you guys think? I think this was a weaker one because it's hard to talk about Ireland when there's when I disagree with my own thesis. It's kind of hard to discuss it. So, well, that's that. 16 out of 20 possibly, 17 out of 20. But I feel like no matter what, if you follow my formatting, you'll get a good mark. Okay, so at least a 6, guaranteed a 6. I'll guarantee you a 6 if you speak like me in your actual IOC. Okay, good luck, guys.